Today, we are diving into something really fascinating, an attempt to build a bridge between the spiritual and the scientific. We're going to break down what's called the Arreqqana Goddess equation. Now, don't let the word equation throw you. This isn't some cold formula. It's much more like a resonance map, a way to chart all the different pieces that have to come together to create what someone might call a divine experience.
This quote from the source material just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the core challenge here. Can we actually use the precise language of math to explore something that so many people feel is way beyond logic? That's the big question we're tackling. So this is the central idea. The point of the Arreqqana system isn't to somehow trap a goddess inside a formula. No way. Instead, it's about offering that resonance map we just mentioned. It's a model for understanding the different ingredients that need to line up for a person to have a genuinely divine encounter. And right away, we get to the big questions. You know, the ones that are always lurking under the surface. Is this experience a matter of psychology? Is it metaphysics? Or something else entirely? The really cool thing about this equation is that it's actually designed to hold space for all of these possibilities. So let's pull the formula apart and see how it works. Okay, here we go. We're about to break this whole thing down piece by piece. Each letter, each variable you're going to see represents a key concept, and once you get them, the whole model will click into place. First, things first, we need a working definition. So, in this system, goddess isn't necessarily a literal being. It's more like a principle, kind of like the principle of gravity. It could be a force of nature, a deep psychological pattern, or something cosmic. But the key is that it's experienced as something conscious and independent that you can actually relate to.
All right, our first variable is Q, which stands for Kihivaya. The easiest way to think about this is as the internal component. It's like the pre-existing software running in our minds. You know, those universal stories of the wise woman or the hero's journey that are embedded deep in our culture and our own psychology. It's that inner pattern just waiting to be activated. Next up, we've got N for Naraveta. Now, if Kiyava is the software inside you, Naraveta is kind of like the Wi-Fi signal that's just everywhere. It's described as this external, impersonal energy or cosmic frequency that's always out there in the universe, whether you happen to be tuned into it or not. And here is the most mysterious variable of all, S for Savacorum. This one is the real wild card. It represents the possibility of a literal, independent, conscious being. See, the equation doesn't say this is definitely real. It just holds a place for that possibility. And that makes the model flexible enough for a true believer or a total skeptic.
Now we get to the most important piece of the puzzle, R for resonance. And you gotta notice, this isn't just added to the others, it's the multiplier. This is the human element. It's your conscious attention, your nervous system actually engaging with everything else. It is the literal act of tuning the dial on the radio to catch that signal.
So when you put it all together, you get this. The experienced divinity, the G, is the sum of that internal pattern, the cosmic field, and the potential independent agency, all of it multiplied by your conscious human resonance. Without that human element activating the whole thing, the equation just doesn't go anywhere. So let's just run a quick thought experiment. What happens if this final variable, that resonance, is at 0? What if there's no human tuning in, no conscious engagement whatsoever? The entire experience becomes 0. This right here is the absolute core takeaway of this model. A goddess might exist as an archetype or a cosmic field or even a literal being, but without human engagement, without that activator, she is simply not encountered. The experience depends entirely on you. Now, this idea that the human element is absolutely essential, it naturally leads to the most common skeptical question out there. And it's a question this framework is clearly designed to face head-on.
And there it is, the big one. Isn't this whole thing just a mental construct, just a product of our own psychology? Well, the system's answer is pretty fascinating because it doesn't just give a simple yes or no. Instead, it kind of challenges the question itself.
See, this is how it reframes the whole debate. It argues that calling something a mental construct doesn't make it powerless or fake. Think about it. Language is a mental construct. Justice is a mental construct. Money. They're all ideas we collectively agree on, and they have very real world-shaping power. So why would a spiritual construct be any different? So the equation holds this tension between the two big views, right? Is it an internal pattern that's shaping our psyche, or is it a literal being that exists totally outside of us? This framework basically says maybe both.
It suggests the experience is what truly matters, regardless of the ultimate source.
Okay, now things take a really interesting turn. This isn't just a philosophical exercise. The source material actually lays out a detailed, real-world protocol for testing these ideas in a way that is both super ethical and scientifically rigorous.
So before anyone does any kind of testing, the protocol establishes these rock-solid ethical safeguards. The main thing to notice here is that it's designed to be a wellness exercise, not some kind of loyalty test. The focus is all on safety and autonomy, and it even builds in this idea of epistemic humility, which means that getting a no-effect result is considered totally valid data. That's a huge deal.
Now this is where it gets really clever. The study uses a classic three-arm trial design. One group does the full goddess invocation, the second group does a neutral contemplation practice, and the third group engages with the exact same imagery, but is explicitly told it's all just an act of imagination. This design is brilliant because it helps isolate what part of the practice is actually causing any of the effects people report.
And the procedure itself is really well structured. It runs over 5 weeks with short daily practices, weekly check-ins with a neutral facilitator, and a big focus on safe integration at the end. It's a remarkably grounded and methodical way to approach a subject that is, well, often anything but.
So, after all that, what could a test like this actually prove? Well, this brings us right to the philosophical heart of the whole thing, the deep, deep challenge of trying to measure the unmeasurable. The source material makes a really important distinction about what the word proof even means here. To prove the practice has a psychological benefit, the archetype model, you just need to show that it reliably helps people feel better. But to prove that an independent being actually exists, whoa! The standard of evidence would have to be extraordinary, requiring things that are almost impossible, like getting the same results from committed skeptics.
And that's because, ultimately, there are limits to what we can measure. The same data could be explained away as a placebo effect, or as archetype activation, or as genuine contact. You just can't scientifically measure someone else's inner experience. Demanding physical proof for a non-physical idea might be like asking a hammer to do a screwdriver's job. It's just the wrong tool for the task.
And this brings us to the final, really profound thought. Meaning leaves footprints only through the walker. You can measure the walker, sure. You can check their heart rate, their stress levels, their sense of well-being. You can see the effects of their journey. But you can't scientifically measure the meaning itself. That's something that is carried inside the individual, leaving its traces on the world only through the life they choose to live.